Welcome to the Negotiation Club podcast with Philip Brown. The Negotiation Club is the only community focused solely on enhancing your negotiation skills training through practice with others. Today on the podcast, we're talking to special guest Michael about why using someone's name is one of the most important things you can do in a business setting. Here's Philip and Michael.
Hi, and welcome back to the Negotiation Club podcast. Now, this is where we're going to be talking to other experts in the industries, in negotiation, procurement, sales, wherever it's going to be, and actually find out some of those top tips, those techniques, those tactics that you can practice in your negotiations. And today we have Mike Phillips. Now, Mike has over 3 decades, 30 years of experience in procurement negotiations as well. Mike, do you want to just add a little bit, explain a little bit about who you are and a little bit more information?
Yes. Good afternoon, Phil. So, yes, I, for 30 years now, have run my own niche consulting business focusing on procurement negotiation. So I work with all sorts of organisations, everything from the NHS, local councils, to international companies, mostly manufacturing, helping their supplies team negotiate better deals on everything that they might be buying. So everything from the stationery to the steel they might need to make their products.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating with negotiations, the sense that it's a skill, but it just is a skill that you use across the board. You can develop it, and what you learn in one industry is really effective in other industries as well. So I always advise people to try and get experience across the board.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's something that comes up with me quite frequently, because I might go and speak with a potential client and they'll say, "What do you know about our specific industry?" And whilst not wanting to be dismissive, but the fact is that negotiating skills are transferable. You've obviously got to understand a bit of the nuance of the specific situation you're in, of course, but the negotiating is similar because we're all human.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's why I love the procurement role as well. Procurement. I've often found that when you are in that kind of career in a business, you get involved in every function, every facet of the business. It's a great way for somebody who's new into a career to get to understand the business. Go into procurement. You're in finance, HR, manufacturing, you name it. You'll get involved in those areas. So definitely. Which, of course, after 3 decades, I suspect you've also picked up a few hints and a few techniques which have worked well for you.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think as you go through your career, there's a little bit of trial and error, of course. You come to know what works and what doesn't work. And so I think in particular, you and I have discussed that trying to make a connection with people is absolutely vital. So as I said earlier, we're all human. We respond in a human way. And if you want to get a great deal, you're going to struggle to get a great deal if the person across the table basically doesn't like you. Now, on one level, you don't want to be kind of sycophantic and such like. You've got to be assertive, but they've also got to kind of respect you as well. And so in respect of it's a question of making that personal connection with them, using their name, having a little bit of time at the beginning to, what did you do this weekend? A little bit of that nice sort of introductory rather than just bouldering in. But I do think this use of, and I say this to people when I do negotiating training, it's not only when you meet, it's if you write an email, use people's names, because when someone says your name, there's an immediate connection. You hear it, and it really makes a difference.
And actually, this is the bit that I wanted to pick up on, because the reason for asking to have a chat with you is that I saw a post on LinkedIn from you several weeks ago, and it literally said, use a person's name. Now, what I love about that is the simplicity of it that allows us to try it, to practice it, and to see what actually happens. We had Tobias, who's a student at the beginning on our first podcast, actually, and he talked about the relationships and the importance of relationships. And you seem to be emphasizing the thing as well. So tell our audience really about the use of names in a negotiation. How would you go about that? What's your advice on that?
Well, I think, Phil, it's got to feel natural, hasn't it? That's important. And so I think maybe there's a case there for a bit of practice. You could, and I always actually, if it's a really important negotiation, I do encourage people to practice the negotiation with a colleague, maybe, or a friend. So you get used to it. So if this is something that you don't habitually do, use people's names, I really encourage you to get into the habit, because then if you get into the habit of doing that, in a social situation or whatever, then when you come into a negotiation, it will feel more natural. But so there's no real magic formula other than remembering that you're dealing with someone across the table who's a person, who will go home this evening and have dinner with their family and whatever, the normal problems that everyone has. And so you're remembering that this is a person you're dealing with. So that that's the importance of using the name. And it's also a case of it's about making a connection. So another way to sort of expand the thought, you're making a connection by using someone's name. Also notice how they speak, how they present themselves in terms of the style. So, for example, if the person is very businesslike and number oriented, then that's the way you need to respond. Mirror what they're doing as well. And this is all about even speak the way they speak. I mean, obviously, don't copy their accents, if you know what I mean. but so speak in the way they speak, and this is all building upon. They've got to come out of the meeting feeling that they've had a proper conversation, that the person on the other side of the table has listened to them and has connected with them. So using a name is part of that responsibility. And by the way, if you want to experiment, try going into a meeting that's important and don't use anyone's name at all and see what difference you get.
Yeah, there's almost a benchmark you can do there as well. I mean, and again, this is why, Mike, I love the practice negotiations that we do at the club, which is a case of try it this way, try it that way. So, I'm going to get our club members in the next couple of meetings, literally not tell all of them this is going to happen, but just tell one or two of them, just say, do not use their name, or really use their name, and just see how the observers actually find it as well, because it is really about seeing it occurring. You learn from it. Now, there's a couple of things I would probably suggest with that, and a few things I've learned as well. We just jumped onto this meeting. First thing I said to you is, is it Mike or Michael? And it was just clarify, because, I've got Phil or Philip. And some people do have a preference. I tell you what,
yes.
I got into some real trouble. I sent an email to a gentleman whose name was Jonathan. And I put, hi, John. And he just gave me the most horrendous email back. How dare you reduce my name? I thought, okay, there's a lesson there for me as well. Yeah. Not just in when you're speaking to somebody, but just don't assume anything, even in your emails. Is just, find out, is it John or Jonathan? Is it Michael or is it Michael? Is it Phil?
That's a key point, Phil, because you're right in making assumptions. Now, you asked me whether it was Michael, and I said, it doesn't really matter. So I'm relaxed about that. That's me. But as you say, other people are not. And so, yeah, a really important point. Yeah.
And I guess the other thing as well is pronunciation. We have such a global world now that we have a lot of individual names which I personally find very difficult to pronounce. So I always try and check. I literally always just say, is this the correct way of saying it? I will often get corrected by that person. That's fine. And I'll often apologize. I said, I'm really sorry if I butcher your name. I'm not doing it on purpose. I just live with me. So even the use of a person's names comes with some pitfalls and some mandatory checks, I would say, in your negotiations, in your meetings.
Yeah, Phil, but you make a good point. If you get it right, if you take the time, particularly on the pronunciation of the name, is really good, because people, that again is making a connection. You bothered to check that it's pronounced right. And if you hadn't bothered and you went through the whole meeting frequently using the name and pronouncing it wrong, you're going to have the opposite effect to what you wanted. They're just going to be internally rolling their eyes. And every time you use their name, it's going to irritate them.
Yeah, exactly. They're only thinking about that. You can be guaranteed if somebody is sat there thinking, he's not getting my name right, that's all they're going to think about it. So it it is such a small thing, but it's also such an important thing to understand in any negotiation, any engagement.
Yeah, because we're, as I said earlier, we're humans. We're not robots. We're emotional creatures, and even when we're in a business meeting, we feel like we've got our emotions under control. We're still emotional people. So yeah, that sort of thing. Using the name well will be a big positive, but using it badly would be a negative.
And there's a tip, and I mean, again, I don't know whether you've done this, but often when I'm in a room and there's quite a number of people, I'll often get on a piece of paper and I'll draw the table that I'm sat around, and I'll put little crosses, and as people introduce them, I'll write their names to it. And then when I'm really trying to do that, because I can't remember people's names, but if I've got it written down, I know who they are, what their name is, and they might say who they are, what they do. You've got the information there, and then you can literally go back to, oh yeah, so John was just saying, and you can point to him. And you know what really catches people's attention is when you know their name, when they're not expecting you to know their name. And that's a lovely little tip there as well, I would suggest. So just draw out the table. When people do the introductions, write their names in and just make reference to them by name. Yeah,
Phil, I do exactly the same thing. Exactly right. So that, because again, you can go from a positive to a negative. If you say the wrong name, then that's going to be really bad. So that's a good point, actually, because when we get older, it's harder to retain people's names. So just write them down, so you're going to get it right.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the other thing is when you're in those big meetings and you haven't got their name and you don't know what their name is, it actually makes it difficult to engage with those people as well. So there's another little tip there. So listen, look, Mike, first of all, Michael. Absolutely brilliant to have on there. And what I just want to remind everybody really is that we're not trying to change the world with massive tactics or tricks or techniques. It's just every negotiation has these micro moments, and you can practice them.
Yes.
And just getting a name and doing the name. So we're going to create our little negotiation card to practice with. I think we'll call it Name Thy Name or something, okay? And just have a little thing on there so we can practice it and see how it works. But Mike, any final parting words, maybe about this particular technique or anything else you might want to add?
Well, I mean, I think we've covered it pretty well. I think it's important because we're human. You're not dealing with a robot across the other side. Sometimes people get this idea that a great negotiator is going to be this tough bruiser, when it's not really the case. I always kind of challenge myself when I'm involved in a big negotiation. I want to get to the point where we finally shake hands. I've got everything I wanted out of the negotiation, but we finally shake hands and the other party says, Mike, thank you for all your help. Then I know I've done a really good negotiation.
Yeah, satisfaction. Terminal satisfaction. Yeah. Right, so we're gonna say bye, but before we do, Mike, I just also want to highlight to everybody out there that Mike is actually an author. He has a book as well. Mike, tell us about your book.
Yeah, so I recently wrote a book about negotiation. It uses getting a salary increase as a case study, but actually the principles involved will apply to any negotiation. So, and it's written in a narrative style, so it's like a short story. I hope and believe it's very entertaining, but full of great tips on negotiating. So it's called The Naked Negotiator. If you put that in Google, you'll find it.
All right. Well, I might do one better than that. I'll try and put it in the link in the text for this as well. Listen, Mike, absolutely brilliant to have you on. And what I would say to everybody else is keep on practicing. Sometimes a little bit of practice will take you a long way. But if you do practice, you're doing something that most professionals never do. So make sure you do that. So other than that, goodbye, everybody. See you. Bye.
Thanks, Phil.
If you liked what you heard today, check out thenegotiationclubs.com, where you can find professional development courses, join negotiation club communities, purchase negotiation practice cards, get a private consultation, and more. Until next time, thanks for joining us, and happy negotiating.